Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're going to do our kind of weekly check-in on the Historic Brawl format. Normally what we do every week for the constructed formats is look at the best decks from a statistics site called UntappedGG. It's a tracker that aggregates your win rates with other users. The tracking's free to use. There's a bunch of features. There's some paid stuff, but there's also some free stuff. The tracking's very useful. Just to kind of see how your decks are doing, changes, stuff like that. The link for Untapped is in the video description. I'll also paste these deck lists so you can take a look. But what we try to do is with like the non-standard Explorer historic kind of formats is look at the Historic Brawl format about once a month to see what are the highest performing decks. So we're going to look at the last week's worth of data. It's about 170,000 games of Historic Brawl that were played that's going to be feeding into it. We're going to look at the top 5 highest win rate decks. Technically top 5. I'm going to throw in a 6th that's more of a meme deck that's somehow winning games, but I'll get to it when we get to it. But all the deck lists will be pasted in here so you can take a look at it. We're going to start off with looking at the popularity of the decks, and then we'll look at the decks themselves. So popularity is just like what you're likely to encounter on the ladder. Now, compared to like formats like standard that is more condensed, there's a lot of different decks people can bring, so you'll see it in terms of the percentages of things played. Mythwether Pog is the highest win rate, play rate at 3%. If we look comparatively to say something like Lelia, I think this was when Saffron Olive played the Lelia Discover combo version that had peaked at 3.7, but relatively flat all things considered. I'm just taking a quick scan at popularity. Like Mythweaver has been about 3.5. We have Atali consistently towards the top. Voja, the new kind of wolf elf combo, the new Tajic from Alchemy, Atraxa, Rusko continues to be up there, Lelia and Modi as kind of Simic big things, First Sliveler as 5-color good stuff, and Regavan as turn 1, do you want to concede? So it's kind of like your top most played. We have like an Impakal, we have the Dinos in Pantalazanta, Goshinte still kind of in here, but even with that, it's relatively low. We're seeing like 1 to sub 1% that's being played with it. So jumping into it, highest win rate is actually Admiral Brass, Unsinkable deck. So this was part of the Commander series. It's a 66% win rate, 130 matches. So this Admiral Brass is a 5-mana Grixis 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, you mill 4 cards at the beginning of your combat each turn. You get to return target pirate card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter, and it gets base power 4/4 and haste on the turn. So kind of a Grixis pirate themed reanimator. You're going to be playing a lot of pirates in the deck. Powerful ones like Regavan, but then just kind of incidental pirates. You have Captain Storm in here. Also preface, we're not going to go card for card here. That's why I'll paste it in there. But just kind of going over the themes. You have things like Metallic Mimic, while not necessarily a pirate, can allow you to get extra bonuses for your pirate. Breaches is really sweet in the deck, gets you a whole bunch of abilities. Black Market for some kind of grind value. You have some vehicles in here. Kindred Discovery is a sweet card in here. You choose a creature type, and then it makes all your other creatures that as well. Take advantage of Roaming Throne in here. The OG Admiral Brass is also there. So kind of playing into a Grixis shell. So a lot of cool cards in here that you can take a look at in that shell. Kind of going on, we have technically a pirate, Malcolm, Alluring Scoundrel. So this is the deck I personally hate the most out of any deck in Historic Brawl. 64% win rate, 230 games. I wouldn't be surprised if some of these win rates are just opponents seeing Malcolm and immediately conceding. I know some games I just don't feel like playing against Counterspell Tribal. But Malcolm comes into play. It's basically just a flash tempo deck, a lot of counter spells, protection spells. Malcolm kind of provides card draw through looting, and then lets you kind of free cast stuff once it gets enough counters. You have things like Curiosity style effects, Curious Obsession that lets you draw cards, and then just a bunch of counters, Spell Pierce, like they typed in counterspell and kind of play from there. You have like Snapcasters, Delvers, Terramanders all mixed in, Brazen Borers, like Charm, you can take extra turns. I hate River's Rebuke in the like it's fine in like 4-player because you're only targeting one, but it's such a huge tempo swing in 1 versus 1. This is one of those cards I think they need to recalibrate for the one-on-one format. But you have like Gear Hulks, Shark Typhoons, just a whole bunch of different ways to kind of take advantage. You have your snow covered lands in here. But yeah, if you just want to play Counterspell Tribal, what is Eaten by Piranhas? Never seen this card in my life. Enters the battlefield, creatures lose all abilities, and is a black skeleton with base power. So you see some of these like change like your opponent's effect. Witness Protection is another one that's really good against commanders since it doesn't quite kill them but nullifies a lot of their ability. You then go to Voja at 63.4%. So 5 mana, Naya, 5/5, Vigilance, Trample, Ward 3. Very strong effects. When it attacks, you put X 1/1 counters on each creature you control, where X is the number of elves you control. And then you draw a card for each wolf you control. So this version is built around like an elf tribal style deck. So you have like Allosaurus Shepherd, which is a great mana sink as well for elves. You have some wolves with like Tenacious Pup. Just kind of like your elf package. The Elvish War Master is very strong there. Mass Vandal does double duty as being a shapeshifter. You have a lot of ramp with things like Elvish Archdruid. Gwenna can as well as like kind of ramps you up there. Nissa Resurgent Animist gets you some elves from your deck. Marwyn could generate a lot of mana. Another effect with like the Roaming Throne to double up ETBs. You have Marwyn that lets you basically, this one's kind of cool because you conjure Marwyn and then X Llanowar elves, so it kind of plays into that theme really nice as well. Then you got your wolf package, Tolls Mirrors, Drizzt Do'Urden, Urdurden, Debird. I don't know how to say that one. And then yeah, so just kind of some sweet effects there. So kind of creature, you're playing 2 creature-centric decks. You're playing elves, you're playing wolves, you're playing elves, wolves, and then it provides you a lot of value there. Card that you can also play things like Craterhoof Behemoth in here if you want, just as like kind of your top end to kind of go from there. You have Rising of the Day as well as Rhythm of the Wild, which play nicely since they give you haste. While you might not necessarily be attacking in with massive creatures, all your creatures like your mana dorks, they can tap the turn they come down, so it lets you chain together a bunch of spells. Mythwether Puck, most popular decks, one of the highest win rates as well, 62%. So Mythwether is a 4 mana XX, where X is the number of lands you control, and then whenever 1 or more non-token lands enter the battlefield under control, for each of them, conjure a duplicate on the battlefield. This triggers only once per turn. So it's a mono green kind of ramp deck. You have like utility lands. What's cool with like fetch lands is it gets you 2 lands. Any of these kind of extra lands gets you extra utility lands, which is always pretty cool. So it pretty much pays for itself from a commander tax perspective, since if you play a land after it, it gets you to the next land. So kind of a cool way to get ahead there. You have a bunch of dorks to get you ahead to cast this earlier. And then you're just really playing like big payoff things. Tireless Tracker is really sweet for card advantage. And then you're just playing, like if you want to play big dumb green things, Vorinclex, Godpharaoh Statue, Primeval Titan, Rishkar, Big Nissa, Cultivator Colossus with a bunch of lands, Cityscape Leveler, Portal to New Phyrexia, Big Vorinclex, Last March of the Ents. This card is pretty much game breaking on its own. So a lot of cool kind of effects mixed into there. Big Ulamog. You can play Emrakul the Promise End if you want in this as well. So a lot of cool big cards if you want to play a big green beater deck. And then we go to Tajic Legions Valor. So this is one of the new alchemy cards. This card is really interesting. So it's a 4 mana 1/1 indestructible haste. At the beginning of your combat, you put a 1/1 counter on Tajic. Then you conjure a card from its spellbook onto the battlefield, equal to the number of counters, and it gets you kind of like a whole bunch of like, think Boros themed warriors. You have like Spark Double, you have like the 2/2 Vigilance, Trample, First Strike or Double Strike one. It just keeps pumping out creatures, and it's a pretty hard to kill threat. While with Indestructible, it either needs to be exiled or like -1/1 style counters. You're playing it in an aggressive Boros deck. You have some protection effects. You can play things like Ragavan in there, things to put counters to get it ahead on what you're casting. You can get like Aurelia, I'm pretty sure, in this one. Some equipment like Blackblade Reforge plays really nicely with it. Disruption effects like Invasion of Gobakhan. You have some of the Lord of the Ring cards like Mary in here for some card advantage. And Input Call, Angel Fire Ignition. So if you're looking for like an aggressively slanted red-white deck, this is something to check out. You got Lelia's in here, Exer Combats with Combat Celebrant, Aurelia in here as well as like Aurelia the War Leader. What's kind of cool too, because as Indestructible, you can play like Wrath of God style effects, sweep the board, protect your stuff, which is always kind of sweet in these kind of aggressively slanted decks. Those are the top 5, but technically this last deck is the highest win rate. It's a very strange one, but 69%. What if I told you can play 97 Lions in your deck, and they're all basics? So Cruus, how this works is you play 2 cards, Corrupted Conviction and Cauldron Breaker. Cruus, you just need a hand that you can cast Cruus. With Crucius' ability, you discard the lands, you find these 2 cards, and what you do is you cast Cauldron Breaker here. So when it enters the battlefield, you exile all mountains from your library. When you do, it deals that much damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. So you kind of kill it that way there. You kill your opponent that way by dealing that damage. If it doesn't do enough there, you can sack it to Corrupted Conviction, and when it dies, you put all cards exiled on the battlefield under your control, conjure 4 cards named Volcanic Geyser into your library, and then shuffle. So then you just have a big fireball to kill your opponent that way there. So you pretty much have your tutor effect in your command zone to always find these 2 cards, and you just deal like huge amounts of damage to your opponent that way there. And then kind of looking at it, it's like 4, 8, 12, 15, 17. So it's 80 mountains. So you're going to deal a big chunk of damage to your opponent with this deck, which is kind of silly how it's constructed. But that's it. Let me know what you think. What is your favorite Historic Brawl deck? Mine currently is Yawgmoth. I've been playing a lot of that, really enjoying that. Otherwise, it's Koth, mono-red Koth Planeswalker the Hammer, playing a mono-red control deck. But let me know what you think and what's your favorite deck. We'll catch you next time.